Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Studio Memoirs. I hope you're having a great time. I hope you're happy, hippy, dippy, zippy, all that good stuff. And I hope you got loads of cash. We like it. We like people with cash, right? You got to have some cash. You need to go and, I always say love, peace and cash. They always leave the cash off. So love, peace and cash to you all. I hope you're all doing great. This week we're going to be talking about Eddie Jobson. Pretty weird story, actually. I mean, not weird, but like just weird how I ended up working with Eddie, because Eddie was one of my heroes, definitely keyboard heroes, because there's a lot of times there's a lot of keyboard players that kind of wheedle in the background, but Eddie always had parts. Eddie always had like good parts. That's how I always remember, like In the Dead of Night. Like, it was always like he was like a guitar player. Eddie. I always and he had the violin thing going on, but I always thought he made proper parts. Like he didn't have irrelevant parts. Like when he played, it was like it was a major thing. And of course, I grew up with Eddie all the time. With obviously he played with Zappa as well. That's two people I've played with now with Zappa. I've got Chad Wackerman, who I'm going to do a video about, and Eddie also played with Zappa. Roxy music Eddie played with, but for me, like they weren't the people who I cared about. For me, it was the UK stuff. That was the stuff that I was really attracted to, because there was always, like when Eddie was on something, there was always a kind of pop sensibility about what Eddie did. It was never kind of like too jazzy. That's what I always liked about Tony Banks. He never got, because keyboard players for me tend to get like a bit jazzy. They go, there's a whole world of that thing where they get into, which, fair enough, but it's just, I can't hear that. I'm not, my palate isn't sharp enough or complex enough to hear that stuff, and so they're doing all, you know what I mean. But Eddie didn't do that. Eddie played like, he was like Richie Blackmore of the keyboards. Richie had them great riffs, like Smoke on the Water, and what else did he have? He had like Strange Kind of Woman, that fire, there was just tons of them with Deep Purple, with Richie Blackmore. Eddie was like that to me, only of keyboards. And so, I always thought he was great. I thought he was, everything he did was like meaningful, But I never thought I'd be working with him. I hadn't really heard much about Eddie either. People had said, they said he was difficult. Like a lot of people said, even today, people say he was like, really difficult guy to work with. But if you're going to go and hang out with musicians, you're in that arena. Artists like that, people with a vision are uptight anyway. You've just got to accept that. There's nothing, there's not really much you can do. I always try to just, break the ice with people and like make a joke of things so that, it like laxes the whole situation up. I did that with Eddie. Because when I first walked in, I was like, dude, what's going on? I was in New York at the time. I think it was about 1998. I was signed to a record label, Razor and Tie, and I was doing some albums in there. I was doing a lot of work actually with a lot of different people, and got a phone call or an email. It was an email. I got an email from Eddie, sorry, and he goes like, oh, there was no messing around, just like, hey, I hear you can do this or something. And you know what I'm like, it's pretty intimidating when you come to work with them guys, because they're like, first of all, they're your heroes, right? So, and when somebody's your hero, they've got one up on you, haven't they? Because you kind of like, every time I meet Peter Gabriel, they're kind of like, they don't want anything to do with you, because they can feel you kind of like, hey, Peter, they can feel that, and they, a lot of times when you're hanging out with those people, they tend to not treat you very nice because they think you're after something from them, or, like one of them type of things. So Eddie was definitely one of my favourite keyboard players, no doubt. And he was a brilliant player, but it wasn't because of that, it was because of the parts he played. You're right. He always played great parts, Eddie Jobson, to me. He just had, Rendezvous 602 and like all that stuff. If you listen to like Danger Money that he did with John Wetton and Teddy Bozzio. Danger Money. Brilliant stuff. It was like, because Eddie was a guitar player. He was Richie Blackmore. In fact, when you stand next to Eddie and he plays, when you're actually working with him, he was playing air guitar. When I was playing with him, I think he's like a closet guitar player, Eddie. I think he's like that. Anyway, I got this email, and I can't do what there's some of the players that he's worked with. They're all like jazzers and stuff. They're like, it's like going to like try and work with Guthrie and all them guys. Guthrie, like they're just them guitar players. There's them guitar guys. I don't do that. I do songwriting. I play drums. I do bass. I program. I do Linux. I do. I'm not like a guitar guy like that. So when I get called in for sessions, it's something I have to think about it, because I can't do what and have the knowledge that like Guthrie and them guys have. They're kind of like they're brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant. I'm not one of them type of guys. I'm kind of like I'm probably, I'm closer to Paul McCartney than I am to, or the songwriters like that. Paddy McAloon or something, or just songwriter guys. I'm more like that than I am like the guitar guy who can, dude, there's guitar players out there run all over me in a minute. Technically, And so I'm more interested in melody. So when I get a call from these people, like Eddie Jobson, that type of thing, I'm always kind of like, dude, do I really want to go and put myself in front of this? If you're doing like pop or something, sure. But Eddie Jobson? I remember Steve Vai talking about when Frank Zappa called him, he pulled him in, and I think Stevie was only a young kid, he was about like 22 or something, and Zappa was going, play it in reggae, do it in this, and do it in that, and Steve's going like, dude, So, I was kind of reluctant there, because I was thinking about it. I was thinking, like, Eddie Jobson? I don't know about that dude. That guy's like one of them guys. You know what I mean? Sorry, that's the heater going on. Forgive the noise. He's one of them guys. He isn't, he isn't like, the keyboard player from, somebody called you up. It's like, it's Eddie Jobson, dude. It's like, get real. He's not even a keyboard player. He's Eddie Jobson. It's like a different thing. There's keyboard players and there's Eddie Jobson. And Tony Banks as well. He was another one of them keyboard player guys who just, they were doing something different than what everybody else was doing on the keyboards. I always see Eddie as Richie Blackmore. That's the best way I can put it. He had just great riffs, great parts. They were all good parts. What was that song he had on he did that great album with Teddy Bozio and John Wetton. That was one of my favourite ones, actually. I mean, In the Dead of Night, everybody knows that one, but The Only Thing She Needs. Oh man, there was some in that man inside of me. Brilliant, like pop stuff though. It's like pop. Eddie was playing pop, but it wasn't pop. It was Eddie Jobson stuff. And so I got the email, and I'm thinking, like, do I really want to go and put myself through this? I didn't need the cash. I had a record deal. I was doing great. I had my publishing money. So I didn't need to do it. Like, it wasn't something, I better go just try or. But I thought, yeah, I'll go do that. I'll go and sit with Eddie Jobson and see what happens. And I had a studio on 37th Street and 8th. There was like crack dealers outside and all that shit. It was like real gritty New York stuff, like the smoking drains and the crack dealers outside and the hoes and like all that stuff. And it was real New York. When you live in New York, you have like a love affair with New York. You have your coffee shops and once your molecules get into the vibe of New York, once you start vibrating at the same pace as New York, it's just the greatest place to be in New York City. Certainly was back then anyway. I'm not so sure about now, but certainly was back then. And hang on, I've got to fix that. There you are. And so Eddie had a studio on 23rd Street, but Eddie was posh. So the 23rd Street building that Eddie was in was real sweet, like real nice. And I replied back and I said, hey, Eddie, how you doing? How you doing? I'll come down, I'll do a session. He needed 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So I go down there and I took a cab, go down. I go up it goes like this immaculate building. I go in there because my building was like, it was like gritty New York. Like, you could get killed coming into my studio. And Eddie's was like at a Dorman and it was all just like, really nice. And I go in there and I go up in the lift, and it was one of them elevators in New York where you have to have, they let you up, you know, the door will only open on their floor, right? It goes past everybody's floor, but it opens on your floor. So I go to his studio. It's a beautiful studio. I remember it was long and narrow. I remember that. And he had all sorts of like gold discs on the wall and all this stuff. And he was doing film scores as well. Eddie was doing film scores. That was so he's one of them guys, you know what I mean? And this is like, I'm out of my league here, you know, in that way. Like, I don't really feel like I belong in that arena. Like, you know, there's like a level of class that they've got that I haven't got. And, but I looked down the bottom and there was this like room. It looked like a spaceship because Eddie, he must like his equipment, Eddie. He must like it because there was so much shit in there. You have no idea, dude. Like keyboards, like monitors, like 10 Pro Tools rigs and screens. And like, you know, it was like a spaceship. It was like Star Wars or something. And I go in there and he wasn't particularly friendly. He wasn't unfriendly either. He was doing Eddie. If anybody knows Eddie, you know what Eddie's like. It's like, oh, well, and the first thing he said to me, he said, I've had all these Americans in all week and you can't fucking do it. And I go, well, what's up, Eddie? He said, well, you know, the last guy that was in yesterday, I played him the stuff and he said to me, give me 5 minutes till I get the groove. And I said, there is no fucking groove. There is no fucking groove. I love that. There is no groove. I love it. And so I'm like, all right, that's cool, Eddie, great. And we got talking a little bit. I realised he was from Newcastle, like, or up that in the northeast at least. And so I kind of broke the ice with him by, you know, I don't know whether you've heard one of my last album, but The Big Purple Castle, but there was some things on there where I used to have a laugh because we'd go to the clubs, we'd go to the cabaret clubs, and the old guys who would introduce the bands always got their names wrong, you know. And it's a pretty common thing up in the north where people, or it's usually the old guys. So instead of like Sylvester Stallone, they'll call him Sylvester Stallone. I love him like Sylvester Stallone, you know, like they got names like that. He got, instead of Sean Connery, I love Shrunken Harry. Shrunken Harry. Well, so I broke the ice with Eddie because he must know that. He must know that whole thing because he's from there. So I started to call him Ed D. Jobson. Right, that was what the thing. He's all right, like a great player like that lad, Ed D. Jobson. You know, which brought you know, I did get a smirk out of Eddie for about that, so for about 2 seconds, but and so we got right down to business. There was no pissing around at all, and like and he played me the stuff, and it was like, dude, it was serious shit. It was all over the place. It was like, it was in weird timings, like, you know, it was pretty whacked out, you know, on the prog scene, and I tried a few things. We did a few things, but what he liked when I did the tapping thing on the... See, why don't we do it? Let me show you. Can I do it? Let me have a look. I don't know what I can do with this. Hold on, stay there. Let me get my classical... Shit. There we go. Eddie liked me, so I'm doing this and it looked like that type of thing. That's what he wanted. He wanted that. Hang on. Hold on. So I'm sitting there and I've got like Eddie going, no, do that thing. Because he's an intense guy. And that's the thing, you know, when you're working with people like that, there are certain musicians that are just really intense. Like, you just got to deal, you know, it's like they're not being mean. It's not personal. You know, it's not like a personal thing. You know, you can tell because they're not like telling you you're wrong or anything. They reckon, yeah, they do that one like that, like do that again, play that second, play it twice, you know, it's like they know what they want. Eddie knew what he wanted, That's what I loved about him. It makes my job easy then. It's like, oh, he wants that, and I can ask him questions. Well, what about if I do this, Eddie? No, I don't like, don't. No, do it, that's a waste of time. Do the thing, go back to play it the first time. When he comes in again, play. So I was dropping in like every 8 seconds. So I'd go, and he'd stop the Pro Tools, and then he'd go like, right, on the next one, it's in like a G over 6 with, and I'd go like, so this one, yeah, do that one. And so, right, after 3, are you ready? And it'd be in like 17/6 or something like that. And he'd go like, now! And Eddie was standing there doing the air guitar, fucking, and he called me back the next night, so, and because because when you're working with somebody like that, you've always got to be up for being fired, you know what I mean? Especially somebody like me. Like if you called, like say Guthrie, let's say Guthrie, because he's my man when it comes to technical stuff. Guthrie can play anything. Guthrie can play absolutely anything by anybody ever. Guthrie's just doing his thing, but I'm not that. So if you call Guthrie and like he can do anything like what you want him to do. But I can't do that. So you always got to be open to the fact that you might get fired. Like, I don't think anybody's going to fire Guthrie because he's too good. He'll just do anything you want. And so I go home that night and I'm on Monday and I'm thinking like, because I didn't know how I'd done. I didn't, because it was coming at me that fast. I think the session, it only lasted about 2 or 3 hours, the first one. And the stuff was just coming at me that fast. He was like starting and stopping. I was going, because he's that intense and he's that good. He's that good, dude. It all made sense to him. Like he was like bang, 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 bang. And I'm sitting there thinking like, whoa. Right? And at the end of the 3 days, I just said goodbye and it goes, oh, goodbye, like that's what Eddie was like. But now here you go. I saw him about a month ago on the Cruise to the Edge and I wanted to go watch the UK live and I couldn't because I was on stage with Dave Kersner at the time. I was really desperate to see what he was going to do with Mike Keneally and all them guys. Oh, Mike's a lovely bloke. What a great bloke. Lizzie and Mike were talking all the time backstage when I was on stage. Lizzie loves Mike as well. They're great, absolutely amazing. And of course we had Marco there, Marco Minimum. Old Marco was there. I was hanging out with the Germans for a bit, and he told me that he was part of that 99 Red Balloons by Nina. I didn't know that. I was like, bro, he must have been a kid when he did it. And anyway, back to Eddie. And so I saw Eddie on the cruise and I went, Eddie Jobson. I was in the restaurant and he went, Francis Dunnery. And he was so cool, dude. Eddie, so he's obviously like really lightened up. I don't know what, I think something good happened to Eddie, Not that he was bad. He wasn't bad at all before that. He was just intense. Like, he was fucking intense, And you have to know how to deal with them people. There's people out there like that. They're intense. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're not pissing around. But Eddie was great, and I don't know what happened to the album come out. He either thought what I did was crap, or maybe it wasn't about me. Maybe he just didn't want to put it out. I don't know what happened. But he was filming it as well. He filmed it as well. So I don't know what the hell was going on. And I can't really remember that much about it now. I just know it was an intense time, and I was kind of very aware of being, under the gun of Eddie Jobson. You know what I mean? It's like, dude. But it was all good. It was good, good energy. Eddie was all right. I know his girlfriend was laughing at Ed Jobson. I remember that. I can't remember if it was his wife or his girlfriend. I can't remember. But I remember she was pissing herself laughing when I said Ed Jobson. That was a big thing of the. And I was clowning around a bunch of times because sometimes when you meet people and they're that serious that you can't really clown around with them. And life, I don't take life that seriously now, especially. And so you've got to like lighten up. It Bites were always like that. That was the greatest thing with It Bites. There was never any serious shit going on, dude. I'm telling you. It was like joking from the second we got up till we went to bed. It was just it was like going to like a comedy club with like Bob Dalton and all that and Dick Nolan and all that. Old John. It was absolutely amazing. So it's, when you get somebody like Eddie, you've got to, at least do something to try and lighten the situation up. But and he was great. He was absolutely brilliant. I can't tell you what how good I did or what it was like or anything like that. But that was my thing, you know, working with your heroes it's a rough gig, dude. It's real rough, you know, when you start to go work with your heroes and people you've looked up to all your life and people who you've like ripped off all your life. You know, sometimes Eddie's playing stuff and I'm going, hey, that's my song. And I'm thinking like, no, he did it first and I ripped him off. You know, it's like that. You know, so that was that. That was my my Eddie Jobson story, and I'm a wonderful man, Richie Blackmore. I called Richie Blackmore of keyboards because you know what the keyboard players are like. They're all uptight and they won't buy you a drink and all that stuff. You know what you're like. I don't need to tell you. You know what it's like. And you sit there with all your clean shit, and you've got your clean keyboard, and you're scrubbing them clean, and they're all in nice cases, and the old keyboard players. And then you know, and it's just such a privilege. What a privilege to be able to work with somebody like him. I'm not, because I'm definitely not worthy of that gig. I'll tell you that. Like Eddie, man, Eddie Jobson. Are you kidding me? Amazing. The guy's forgot more than I know. Absolutely amazing talent, and done some great stuff as well. Like really, really cool shit. That you know, I'm sure he's responsible somewhere for at least 20% of my shit. I know that. Some of the chord changes, right? You think like, wow, dude, that's killer. You know. So, and that was it. That was my Eddie Jobson story. Eddie, I love Eddie, absolutely love him, and I was really pleased to see that on Cruise to the Edge he would lightened right up, and he was actually, we were laughing, and he was actually talking to me in Newcastle stuff. Oh, we're the lads. He was like, you know, doing all that stuff, and we had a good laugh. We had a really good laugh. I'm sorry I didn't get to see UK play. I'd love to see that with Marco and Mike. Just didn't get to see it, but that's my Eddie Jobson story. Please click subscribe. I hope you enjoyed the story. And, you know, some of them are going to be interesting. Some of them are going to be violent. Some of them are going to be whatever. But my Eddie Jobson story is a nice, happy ending. So maybe you don't like them ones as much. I know you like the Mellencamp stories. I've got a few of them, but not with Eddie. I love Eddie. Absolutely love him. Massive, massive respect for everything he's done. Great, brilliant writer, brilliant keyboard player. Just, you know, more Eddie Jobson. That's all I can say. All right, guys, click subscribe, please. And I will see you next week on another edition of Don't Play With Your Heroes. See you then. Bye.